Welcome back, everybody, to Watcher of All Things. My name is Kiki, and this is my podcast where I talk movies, TV shows, and all things entertainment. And today, it is a big episode. The Oscar discussions have started with episode 88, The Smashing Machine. Of course, the movie people are asking, will Dwayne "The Rock" Johnson get an Oscar nomination from this revolutionary, changing chameleon role? We will find out. But before we talk The Smashing Machine, I hope you are all doing well. Another great week. It has been lovely weather in Toronto, to be honest. It's starting to get a little cooler. I have watched some fun movies and TV shows this week that we're going to talk about in the What Else Did I Watch segment at the end of the show. Before that, of course, we will have the review in which there's non-spoilers and spoilers. And before that, we will talk all of the news of the week. So there's timestamps below in this episode, whether you are on YouTube or streaming. You can bounce around, enjoy the parts of the episode that you want if you're avoiding all talk of this movie before you see it, or if you're happy either way, whatever you want to do. But also, one more thing to plug before we hop into the news for the week. New YouTube video. I put out my complete physical media and comics collection for you guys to see, me just walking through it, talking about some of the movies, showing you every single piece of physical media I own. It was a lot of fun. I'm really happy with the video. It was really chill, really, laid back, and sort of just showing you everything I own for fun and these fun little collectible things I have. So go check that out on the YouTube channel, where we are almost at 600 subscribers. We are very close. But as for today, it's going to be a fun one. We have a lot to talk about with The Smashing Machine. I have many thoughts. I saw this on Thursday night in Standard. I didn't see it in IMAX or anything like that. But without further delay, I think we should just hop into the news of the week. So let's do it. Let's talk the news. All right, well, our first piece of news comes from 20th Century Studios, who announced on Twitter and other platforms, "Woohoo! The Simpsons are coming to theaters with an all-new movie on July 23rd, 2027. And the poster is Homer reaching for a donut, and it said, "Homer's coming back for seconds." Now, a little bit of lore about me. As a child, I loved The Simpsons. My brother and I would watch The Simpsons and King of the Hill every day at 5 and 5:30 growing up. The Simpsons movie, I still think, is a very funny movie. I have watched it many times, and I think it's hilarious. I have not watched a new season of The Simpsons or a new episode of The Simpsons in many, many years, because there is just so many seasons, and honestly, I don't know how funny it even is anymore. I'm sure it's still like okay chuckling laughter or a little bit of air out of your nose laughter, but I miss like the genius days of The Simpsons a long time ago. Monorail, etc., or Mr. Plow, all the classic episodes, yes, from the good old days, not to be a boomer, but this is cool. I'm, of course, going to see this in theaters, and there are many rumors that are spiraling around that this will be the end of The Simpsons, that they are using this movie as a send-off for the characters, for the property, for the show. It's all going to wrap up, so I might have some seasons to catch up on, up to the movie coming in July of 2027, so it's still quite a while away. If it is the end, it's probably a good time for this to happen, considering there's, 40 seasons of the show, or 30, 38, 39, something insane like that. It's crazy. I know they just premiered the new season this week or something like that, but I think a movie could be a very fun send-off for a property like this, where you can take a little bit more time in a longer format rather than a 30-minute episode to wrap up all the different characters, and you could even age them because they haven't aged, only the voice actors have. And I was listening to a clip from the show the other day, or watching it, and there are definitely differences in the voices from 20 years ago, of course, because all of these people have aged, the voice actors, and then I saw on Twitter everyone saying, "Oh, Marge sounds terrible now," or even Flanders. I saw a lot of people complaining that Flanders sounds so tired now. So I'm not sure. Maybe people just have unrealistic expectations for aging voice actors. It's not just, physical actors in person on screen that age, but, animated people and animated voice actors, not animated people, they don't age, but animated voice actors obviously are going to age, and the show has been on for 30 years, so I don't know what we're expecting. Either way, that was a fun little piece of news that I'm very excited for it to come out, as well as this next story. According to Nexus Point News, Glenn Powell and Michael B. Jordan are rumored to be in talks to star in Joseph Kosinski's Miami Vice remake in theaters August 6th, 2027. Dude, this sounds absolutely fantastic. I think those are two great choices. There are other fun choices that we could do. I saw some people saying saying that it should be Cooper Hoffman and David Johnson from The Long Walk. That would be really funny. But there's also, oh my God, what's it? Damon Idris from F1. I think he would be a great choice, but maybe they're going for people that are like kind of in their 30s or mid 30s going to their 40s. But that sounds really, really neat. I think they are two very, I don't know, stylish and like cool, sort of classy dudes that could play these. I don't know if they're going to do an 80s aesthetic or if they're going to do a modern day Miami Vice. I'm kind of hoping 80s a little bit would be kind of fun, but I could see it just being modern day because that's a lot easier and make it as vibe-ish as possible. Kaczynski is an interesting writer on that because a movie I'm not going to talk about this week that I'll talk about next week, but he did Tron Legacy. Of course, he did Top Gun Maverick. He did F1. So he also did, what is it, Oblivion with Tom Cruise. So he's obviously, you know, a big tentpole movie guy, but making remakes is interesting that he has done these reboots in the past, like a Tron Legacy or a Top Gun Maverick, where he knows how to carry on the torch in a respectful way. Some people don't like Tron Legacy. Others love it. I'm very excited to watch it, but we'll talk about first Tron today and what else I watched. But I think he is a really good director, and it's going to be, you know, an action cop movie of Miami Vice, and I'm very excited to see where it goes. I think those are two fascinating casting choices. Glenn Powell, very cool. I like a lot of the stuff that I watch him in. I've heard his new show, Chad Powers or whatever, is not good, so I haven't tuned in to watch it yet, but Michael B. Jordan, I think, is like one of the best actors working right now of the new generation, rather. Probably get an Oscar nomination for Sinners this year, and I'm excited to see where this project goes. I mean, it's got to start getting into pre-production and stuff like that. If it's coming out August 2027, they're probably gonna have to film it next year, of course, so get on it. But let's hop into our next story. A Peaky Blinders sequel series is in the works at Netflix and BBC. It has been greenlit for 2 seasons with 6 episodes each. It follows a new generation of Shelbys in 1953 during Birmingham's reconstruction after World War II. Cillian Murphy will executive produce. Now, I watched the first 4 seasons of Peaky Blinders, never watched 5. Has the movie come out yet? No, it hasn't. Wait, haven't? No. The movie hasn't come out for Peaky Blinders yet because that would have come out and I probably would have caught up. But I think it's an okay show. It was interesting for like the first 2. Then I think it's just kind of the same thing over and over. And it's the aesthetic and who has sort of taken on that show as their aesthetic or like their vibe or their style is kind of embarrassing. And like these cool dudes who are all like Peaky Blinders aesthetic is very millennial, mid 2010s. And we've kind of moved past it a little bit. But I mean, I'm curious to see this. Peaky Blinders was strongest before it was on Netflix, which was the first 2 seasons, right? Just like Black Mirror. I think it was a BBC show before it went to Netflix. But I still really like Peaky Blinders in general. I think the first 3 seasons are really strong. The first 2 are probably the strongest. But at the same time, I'm curious to see if Stephen Knightley, I think, is the creator, right? And he's writing a Bond movie right now. I'm curious if he's going to come back for this and if he's going to take on the franchise again, or if he's sort of passing on the baton or passing, you know what I mean? If he's moving on and saying someone else can take on the franchise. But, you know, I think a Peaky Blinders cinematic universe is interesting, and I wonder who's going to show up from the originals and from the movies and all of that stuff. I just think we're another sequel. It is what it is. I think it's an okay idea, and it's an interesting period that they're going to focus on, the 50s, and England was so heavily bombed, the UK in general, during World War II, of course, by the Nazis. Rebuilding Birmingham, how are they going to get the gang status? Or, you know, Thomas Shelby was a politician towards the end or whatever, and I don't know, that's sort of where the show lost its appeal to me, is like, oh, he's a politician now, and it was more fun when he was a local businessman. Oh, you're alright, Tommy. You're gonna go down there, you gotta go to the pub. Anyways, that's my Peaky Blinders impression. Alright, next story. I'm sure that will be fine, but let's talk about Bill Burr. I've been like a pretty, I don't know, a solid fan of Bill Burr. I like a lot of his stuff, most of his stuff, but I think some of his stuff is less funny than other stuff. I don't know, that made no sense. But anyways, he, of course, performed at the Saudi Arabia Comedy Festival, the Riyadh Comedy Festival, along with a bunch of other hacks, which was super disappointing. And he has come out defending his decision, of course, because he would. Basically, Bill Burr defends performing at the Riyadh Comedy Festival, saying it was one of the top 3 experiences I've ever had. You think everybody's going to be screaming death to America and they're going to have like fucking machetes and want to chop my head off, because this is what I've been fed about that part of the world. It was great to experience that part of the world and to be part of the first comedy festival over there in Saudi Arabia. The royals loved the show. Everyone was happy. The people people that were doing the festival were thrilled. What are we doing, man? What are you doing, Bill? Like, that's just peak hack. Like, oh, well, everybody there was enjoying it. It's like, yeah, no shit. You're performing at this huge, like, mega franchise or mega million, billion, trillion dollar Prince Fest with a bunch of other hacks. And it's a little worryingly tone deaf. And I don't know, it's commentary that he's making is just like, sort of get that bag. Sorry, I'm getting distracted by a squirrel that's outside the window. And what's he doing? I don't know. But anyways, Bill Burr is just like sort of approaching fraud territory or hack territory. And it worries me because, oh, he's this down to earth comedian. And yet he's going to go to Saudi Arabia and get that bag along with a bunch of other people. And it's just kind of depressing. It's like, I thought you had more of a spine because remember all the Luigi Mangione stuff happened and he was all like, yeah, fuck billionaires, fuck this wealth war shit. And like, you know, there needs to be more blah, 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 blah. And then he's all anti-capitalist. But now he's all, oh, well, Saudi Arabia, I'm going to go there and perform. And it's like, yeah, you made so much money off of that. No shit, man. Like, it's just a little bit tone deaf, a little bit hypocritical. It's very disappointing as someone that, you know, was drinking the Kool-Aid of Bill Burr and being like, oh, maybe he could be one of these left-wing comedians that's, you know, a white dude and could be our Joe Rogan along with Hassan. And it's depressing. And it's just like, what at this point, who do we got, man? Who do we got? It is what it is. Another one bites the dust. Let's jump into our final story. Let's talk AI actress Tilly Norwood, one of the most disturbing stories that I have read in a while. If you're out of the loop, they have created an AI actress, and there was this big rumor this week from probably some PR firm that just put it out to see if it could gain traction that a talent agency was going to sign this AI actress Tilly Norwood, so basically own the rights to this AI that they could put her in properties. And that's disturbing enough as it is, and I'm very happy that so many stars and creators and producers and directors came out and said this is fucking bullshit. Like, it's disgusting. I don't want this. Actually, Emily Blunt very against it and had a lot of great commentary about it, that no one wants to see that. They want to see humans on screen, and it's just so stupid. Well, at the same time, one thing I find so disturbing, and I saw a really good TikTok talking about it today as well, is like, it's so creepy that they've created this sort of anonymous, uncanny valley AI young girl actress that, like, I saw a bunch of people being like, oh, well, she's the ideal male fantasy, that she's like this virgin actress that's young and can be manipulated by men because she can't say no and she can do whatever they want in a film and she doesn't have human boundaries, is what I'm trying to say. And it's so true. Like, you wonder, why are they creating these kinds of AI stars? Not just how perverted it is that they're creating. Of course, she's a young actress that they can make perverted shit out of. That they want people who they can manipulate and they can do whatever they want with them on film. And it's disgusting. It's so terrifying. And shout out Sean Astin, who, of course, Lord of the Rings star, Goonies, all that stuff. He is the new SAG-AFTRA president, and he was so strongly against it. Like, this is literally what we fought against, and it's so bullshit that this is even happening already. So shout out him. But it's such a gross story. And just when, like, you think things cannot get dumber in this world, it's just immediately dumber with this kind of stuff that, like, oh, let's sign an AI actress. Really disappointing. I'm hoping nothing comes of it. This is sort of the first warning sign that these kind of things may happen. But that is going to do it for the news. I think it's about time that we talk The Smashing Machine, a movie I was very much anticipating this year. Again, timestamps below. If you just want to listen to the non-spoilers, you can do that and then hop to the What Else I Watched segment right after. But let's do it. Let's talk The Smashing Machine. The Smashing Machine is a 2025 sports drama coming in at 2 hours, 3 minutes, directed and written by Benny Safdie on a budget of $50 million US, and reviews are currently pretty positive. 7.2 on IMDb, 72% on Rotten Tomatoes with no audience score yet because it's still only Friday. 3.4 Letterboxd average with a 3.5 star mode rating. The synopsis for the film: MMA fighter Mark Kerr reaches the peak of his career but faces personal hardships along the way. The film, of course, stars Dwayne "The Rock" Johnson, or just Dwayne Johnson as he's credited now, as Mark Kerr, Emily Blunt as Dawn Staples, Ryan Bader as Mark Coleman, Bas Rutten as himself, and Alexander Usyk as Igor Vovanchin. I definitely said that wrong. And then a bunch of other people that are just various fighters in this film. But The Smashing Machine, I'm pretty excited to talk about this film, even if I didn't love it. So here are my initial thoughts. I am a little underwhelmed. I I don't know. This is much more of a UFC biopic rather than an actual Mark Kerr biopic about him. I was surprised. I thought this was a really safe film that doesn't really dare to do anything out there or special, and this was one of my most anticipated films of the year because going into it, I had some questions of how is Benny Safdie going to do as a solo director? I know he did The Curse, but how is he going to do in the feature film format by himself without his brother? How is Dwayne "The Rock" Johnson going to do, of course, in this newfound wave of fame in a serious role where he is not just Dwayne "The Rock" Johnson, he is DJ, he is Dwayne Johnson, he is the serious actor that can't hide behind CGI, green screen slop that is just, him giggling and flexing his way through a film. He needs to actually show some serious actor muscles, despite this film not just being about muscles. And then I wanted to see what would a Safdie biopic look like. If we got the biopic genre is very overdone, so how can one of the directors of two of my favorite films ever, Uncut Gems and Good Time, really flip this dry genre on its head? And I don't think a lot of these questions were answered in a great way, but let's start with the performances. Of course, Dwayne Johnson as Mark Kerr, I think he's actually okay. Is he going to get an Oscar nomination? I'm going to save that for the end of my non-spoiler section, but as an actor that is stepping outside of these roles where, I don't know, he's some muscly guy in the jungle, whether it's Jungle Cruise with Emily Blunt, whether it's Jumanji, whether he's voice acting on Moana, or whatever it might be, as a serious actor, I do think he can do it. Even if I don't think he hit his full peak in this film, and there are some moments where you can see he's buckling under the pressure a little bit, I do think there is potential there, and there is a real core of his talent that could be explored in the next 20 years of his career, or however long he wants to keep doing this. I know he is doing a Marty Scorsese film, which I didn't even notice, with Jennifer Lawrence, or no, Emily Blunt, and I'm very excited to see him move into this new career chapter or trajectory or path and where it could possibly lead, because this film, you know what, I went into it thinking he could probably do it with all the training he has and with a director like Benny Safdie and the material like this that he has sort of lived through as a wrestler, and he did just as good as I thought he would do, but he did not blow me away. As for Emily Blunt, however, an actress that I enjoy in a lot of things, loved her in Oppenheimer, extremely uninteresting, her character Dawn Staples, and a very boring, typical, incompatible wife that has clear issues. And anytime she was on screen, I sort of found myself drifting and finding her performance so dry and gray and very flat. I was extremely disappointed with her as an experienced actress. But then we do have some less experienced individuals who are in this film. And Benny Safdie, I did see a really good interview with him and Dwayne Johnson today. I'm trying not to call him The Rock because he wants to be called Dwayne Johnson or DJ. That he is someone that puts in a lot of first-time actors in their films, whether it's Uncut Gems, whether it's Good Time, that they do just put like street-level people that they find who are interesting characters in their things. So I was excited to see how he would sort of move on that in this film, and he really does with Ryan Bader, who has never really acted before. He was a WWE fighter, and he plays Mark Coleman, who is sort of the other half of this dynamic duo alongside Mark Kerr, of these two guys who really kickstarted the UFC or mixed martial arts in general. And you know what? Occasionally he is showing that he's not an experienced actor, but surprisingly he was one of the highlights of the film for me. I actually thought Ryan Bader had a few heartfelt moments with Dwayne Johnson as Mark Kerr that really worked for me in talking about friendship and masculinity, which are themes we're going to go into today. Baz Rutten as himself, I thought he was a really good supportive coach, and I liked him a lot. I really liked a lot of the people surrounding Mark Kerr in this film, except for Emily Blunt. I found Dawn Staples to just be a non-interesting character, but let's talk about the Smashing Machines themes and my theater experience. I'll tell you about my theater experience first, actually. Not a great theater experience. I had two older guys beside me who felt they needed to provide a running commentary on the film. One of them was singing along with every needle drop if he knew the song, and it was just super annoying, and just, it's not fun. Like, just please stop talking. I turned around, and at one point, the girl behind me who was with her boyfriend, they were both in like full body suede tracksuits, and they looked very like classic Eastern European mob, and I can say that as a Croatian, that they looked very Balkan or whatever mob, and she was leaning forward in her seat, like elbows on her knees, just scrolling her phone with like the brightness a little bit down for probably 10 minutes during the movie, and I was like, oh, she's she's bored, and they just kept talking to each other as well, but I wasn't going to tell them to be quiet because I was like, what if I get a knife in the kidney? So anyways, weird theater experience. I don't know. I saw someone behind me after the film, or I heard them rather. They said to their friend, that was amazing. That was absolutely outstanding. That was one of the best movies I've seen this year. And I was like, okay, so like there are people who like this. Then I heard someone in front of me, I think they just said like, that wasn't really anything, or something along those lines. I don't know. Maybe I'm misremembering, but I think it was a very mixed room. But this story, the story of the Smashing Machine, this is a very typical biopic in many ways, but then in, I think, a lot of parts, and I do applaud Benny Safdie for trying to do this, it's trying to subvert the classic biopic cliches that we have gotten, whether it's the rise and fall, or you know what I mean, where it's like, oh, they couldn't get any worse than this, but then they make this grand comeback and the end of the film is a happy tears, blah, 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 blah. At the same time, it's sort of paradoxical, the Smashing Machine, that it is avoiding so many cliches and it is hitting so many cliches at the same time. Now, it's a film about addiction issues and mental health struggles, and I really, really enjoyed the thematic explorations that we got at times. But in avoiding so many parts of this 3-year period, I felt like there was a lot of missing context, or there were huge missing chunks where I'm like, I get why Benny Safdie is skipping that era because we don't need to see him winning there. I get it, but at the same time, it feels a little bit jumpy. And that was one of my biggest complaints when I got out of the film, is this feels very jumpy on the editing room floor. Something big would happen, and then all of a sudden we would jump forward 8 months or 9 months, or I found myself sort of getting lost in the timeline. Like at one point in the film, and I won't say spoilers, obviously, there's a press conference, and then we cut to later the year, or later in the year, or the same year, or the next year, and I was just like, oh, wait, how much time has passed? And then it's like, oh, that was 8 months later, and I'm like, I literally thought this could have been the next year or 2 years later, and the editing just isn't very helpful in this film. I do think it's a little bit messy. So I don't know. I'm sort of split in two camps here, that I applaud the effort to, let's do something different in this biopic. Let's focus on something completely different, not in the athletes' wins, but in their losses. And let's only show these extremely intimate moments in this 3-year period. And in that case, I think we did sort of get that with A Complete Unknown last year, in that it's basically focusing on Dylan going electric at the Newport Folk Festival is what it's called. And I said last year in my A Complete Unknown review, I really enjoyed how that biopic was just focusing on a certain time. I don't need to see Bob Dylan as a child. I don't need to see Mark Kerr as a child. But on the flip side of that, I feel like I didn't get to know Mark Kerr as a person very much in this film, because it is so hyper-focused on these 3 years. I don't know. It's very hard to put into words the balancing act that this film is doing of avoiding cliches and hitting all the cliches. But I do appreciate when a biopic goes in with a specific idea of, I want to cover these years to these years because I want to show this certain arc in this person's life, whether it be real or not real or whatever. You know, Marty Supreme, I don't know if he's focusing on the entire ping pong career, Josh Safdie, later this year, but I'm very excited for that film as well, which, I mean, let's talk about the Safdie brothers for a moment, shall we? Heartbreaking that they broke up, of course, because I think Good Time and Uncut Gems are two thrilling films that I love to watch over and over again, but them breaking up, there's been tons of rumors that it was not a nice breakup, that in fact they had a falling out and it was a very bad experience for both of them. In fact, I was just a couple days ago at work talking with my coworkers about the Safdie brothers, and my coworker, I told him that I had seen rumors online that it was not a good breakup. Like, he didn't mention his brother in his Venice speech, I don't think, which is really weird when he won Best Director. My coworker had a little bit more of an optimistic stance that like, no, they'll be fine. Like, they'll get back together. And what do you know? Literally yesterday, they posted a photo together at the Smashing Machine premiere in New York, and they were smiling and embracing each other. So it's, I don't know, it's nice. As someone with a brother, you don't want to see brothers fighting. That sucks. And I think they're both just so creative. I'm really excited to see Marty Supreme later in the year and compare their two individual directing styles. You get this in the writing that Benny Safdie is very driven on slow explanation monologues or slow explanation dialogue where people are really taking their time time while talking and saying very typical everyday conversation things like, oh, hey, do you want to know how I got these eyes? And it's very unglamorous dialogue, which I actually appreciate sometimes. But then on the flip side, it can feel very low energy in times, Benny's writing style. And I think that comes through a lot here, where it's very low energy at points in this film. And I found myself drifting a little bit, and I've seen some Letterboxd users just reading other reviews saying this is a boring movie or this is a very lackluster film. I think it wasn't necessarily boring for me, but I did think it was a little bit like, oh, that was a lot lower effort or energy than I thought it was going to be. Like Kit Laser had a really funny review, actually. Shout out Kit Laser. He said raging bore as his Letterboxd review and gave it 2.5 stars. You know, the Safdie brothers, I'm interested to see Josh's directing style in comparison to Benny's with The Smashing Machine, and what Benny's even doing next. I'm not sure. I know he's doing The Odyssey and he's acting in that, which good for him. But I think directing wise, not just writing wise, but directing wise, this film is, I don't know, it's a little bit of a mixed bag directing wise. I found some of the fight sequences to be a little bit thrilling, but they would lose their energy really quickly. And I found just the handheld far away sort of we're peeking in from another room on every scene to get a little tiring. I mean, I like it at the same time because I think it worked so well in Good Time and Uncut Gems, but here I don't know, I want it to be a little bit closer and get a little bit more of a clear picture of our main characters. And it's just very interesting that he always opts for a handheld, sort of far away, distant approach of his subjects as a director. And I also want to say, I think not the Octagon or the UFC fights in this are poorly directed. I think those are like a mixed bag. There's some good, there's some bad, but I think the actual marriage fighting between Mark Kerr and Dawn, his girlfriend, because that's what a lot of this film is about. Of course, from the trailers, you can see they have some personal hardships and some conflicts with each other. There's one fight scene that felt very Marriage Story, and I saw someone tweet like, this is wrestling Marriage Story. And in the theater, when someone smashes something in their fight, I literally thought of Marriage Story, and I was like, oh my god, this feels so manufactured and like, yeah, just start screaming and throwing shit around. And it's like, that doesn't feel authentic. It feels like it's been rehearsed. And back to the UFC fighting, although I don't think the directing is necessarily fantastic in the UFC fights, the scoring is fantastic by Nala Safaro. She blends this kind of like jazz and at times, what do you call it? Like a synthesizer, something like that. Synthesizer. It's hard to say, but I really love the use of jazz. I've seen some people not loving it, but it's very cool. And it, unfortunately, in the theater, it reminded me of the Michael Scott basketball episode where he starts saying basketball is like jazz and he's on his knee and stuff like that. Had me dying laughing. But in this film, I think it works really well that there's a lot of percussion on every punch, and when they throw each other over, we hear a big swing. Like, it's really energetic and it's really cool. And I love the blending of this like just barbaric fighting where they're just beating the living crap out of each other with some really interesting out there music. And that was the most out there part of the film for me, even though it's jazz, but still putting it within this context, I really, really, really loved it. And I'm not sure, did Nala Safaro do Uncut Gems in Good Time? But either way, I was loving it throughout the entire film. I thought it never really goes overindulgent or it never goes too far into the obscure, and it really worked for me. Now let's talk about the major themes of this film, which to me were masculinity in sports, friendship in sports, and these relationships that can form during these desperate times, and sometimes how with athletes, in fact, it is the sport that is saving them from their personal life vices and gripes, or their support systems might not come from where you think. And it's really fascinating in this film how it's exploring masculinity through Mark Kerr. And I don't think it's not a spoiler to say that, you know, there's one argument between Dawn and Mark Kerr, because this movie is a lot of fighting between the two of them. Almost every time they're together, they argue, and that's what these personal hardships are about Mark Kerr that you can see in the trailer. But at one point, Mark Kerr says to Dawn, I want you to treat me, you know, like a man. You're treating me like a little boy. And she immediately embraces him and is like, oh, my big, strong man and stuff like that. And it's really interesting how he's just someone that wants to be treated maybe with respect, or he feels like he's being babied a little bit, or she is treating him like his pet project and coming at him all the time. And it's just a very fascinating dynamic between them that is extremely unhealthy. And those were some of my favorite parts of the film when we were exploring the unhealthy aspects of that relationship. And then you have the friendship within the UFC world that he has with his coach, what's his name? Bass Rutten, pardon me. And then also Mark Coleman, who is the other major fighter in this film. And I really enjoyed their exploration of friendship. Mark Kerr doesn't really listen to Don with advice or anything like that, but then he has his best friends that he'll listen to because it's almost indirect fighting advice that like, oh, you need to get help or you need to fight this issue that you're having for the sake of being an athlete. And he listens to his friends way more and what's healthy for him. And there's, in spoilers, we'll probably talk a lot more about that stuff in detail. But yeah, I don't know. I just found the friendships that we're exploring in this film to be really lovely, and they are not, toxic masculinity in any way. They are very stern, but at the same time, people aren't afraid to cry. They aren't afraid to ask for help if needed. And there's a really lovely support system there where they hug each other. And it's just, it's really nice to see on screen, and this exploration of masculinity and how it formed into the early days of UFC and how maybe different it is from today, honestly. But a lot of this film can be boiled down to the flashlight versus laser beam thesis that Mark Kerr gives in that trailer where he's in the doctor's office and talking to the elderly woman and her grandson. And he says like, I need to be focused like a laser beam rather than a flashlight. It's like a laser beam versus a flashlight in the ring. And a laser beam, you need to be super hyper focused and put all of your energy into one point. And when you let your emotions get the best of you, you turn into a flashlight where you're spreading yourself. And that is basically what this film is about, how emotions and personal issues affect athletes. And it's a pretty simple thesis, but straight up it is just the flashlight versus laser beam thesis that we're exploring within the ring with Mark Kerr, and how his emotions made him a flashlight and he was all over the place versus a laser beam when he is healthy. But The Smashing Machine is definitely a film where I think The Rock has broken that first barrier that could get him some serious jobs, And in fact, I have a bit of a funny fan cast for him that I think now that he is slimming down, he could play possibly an interesting Hugo Strange in a Batman movie, because he kind of does look like Dave Bautista when he slimmed down. And if Dave Bautista couldn't do it, let's get Dwayne The Rock Johnson or Dwayne Johnson in a fake beard and he could play Hugo Strange. I don't know. I might make a YouTube video next month about the Batman Part 2 or this month or something like that. But at the same time, it was interesting how there's this film, and I saw a tweet about this last night, that The Rock has always had with the Fast and Furious movies and in his movies in general. He has a clause in his contract that he cannot lose a fight on screen. The Rock cannot lose a fight. And yet this film is all about Mark Kerr, who for a long time was undefeated. And then when he loses his first fight, that is when we meet him in the film, really, the real Mark Kerr. And it's about a guy who can't deal with losing. And the fact that Dwayne Johnson, pardon me, I'm still going to mess it up and call him The Rock. The fact that Dwayne Johnson is taking on a role about a guy who hates losing is very meta, very interesting. And I think maybe Dwayne Johnson got to do some soul searching with this role and understanding himself as an actor and learning things of, you got to put all that glamorous box office shit to the side and do some real work here. You got to do some real crafting and go back to being a real actor. But as for the Oscar discussion, as I'm going to finish the non-spoiler section, will The Rock win an Oscar? I don't think so. I think there is a chance he will get a nomination. I would say it's probably 60-40 right now, that it's a very strong chance he gets, or a more of a chance that he does than he doesn't. I think he will probably get a nomination, but I don't think he's going to get the win. I just think there are too many strong performances this year that are probably still ahead of him, whether that is Leonardo DiCaprio, whether it's Michael B. Jordan or whomever. I just think he's not quite at that level yet that this is a clear win, but who knows? They love a little bit of a biopic or an inadvertent biopic that maybe Oscar voters will be like, yeah, give it to The Rock and he's going to be this huge star in the future. But we will no doubt see. I think definitely nomination is what I have him locked in at right now. And I might do a predictions thing in the future of like nominations, who I think is going to get it. But let's move into 2 stars and a wish for The Smashing Machine. Star number 1, the fighting is sometimes very brutal in this film and very realistic for UFC. Like, it really does bring you into the ring and you feel every punch, you feel every kick. And I think Benny Safdie did did really well with the fight choreography in a lot of the scenes. Star number 2, The Rock, is just pretty good in some scenes. There are some genuinely gripping scenes with him in this film that I liked a lot. My wish? I really do wish Benny Safdie took more risks with this film and made it less mainstream box office approachable, where it's just a standard biopic. I really wish he gave us some sort of funky or psychedelic stuff to enjoy in this film and just throw us for a loop. But who knows? Maybe Josh Safdie, his brother, is actually the funky one that's going to give us some crazy shit in Marty Supreme. But overall, The Smashing Machine, it did not wow me, but it did occasionally entertain me. It's probably one I won't think about until Oscar season. I have no wish to see this again, really, unless, my girlfriend says she wants to see it. But I think it's not worth seeing a second time. I think it's fun to see once, but I don't need to see it again. I gave The Smashing Machine a 3 out of 5 stars. Let's move into spoilers. All right, spoilers for The Smashing Machine. I want to start with the knife metaphor, or the visual storytelling that Benny Safdie does with Dawn simply handing Mark Kerr a knife that I think kind of maybe sums up their relationship or the issues they have in general. And it's a little complicated, so bear with me, but there's that scene where he's come out of rehab and he comes back home and he notices that the cactus by the pool hasn't been taken care of, and she's like, oh my god, it's just a plant, who cares? And he gets upset about it, of course, and he's like, well, these are hard to grow, blah 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 blah, can you hand me that knife? I think this little transaction that they have where Dawn hands him the knife, blade pointing at him, he takes it from her hands, turns it around so that the blade's pointing at her, and then pulls it to himself, grabs it for himself. And that little indicator right there was my first step or my first realization of oh, interesting. So Dawn always comes at him with on the attack or whatever, and he always turns it around on her, or just a little interesting, argument dynamic. And when he hands it back to her, he hands it to her handle side, how you're supposed to hand someone a knife. You're supposed to take the blade and hand someone the handle of the knife, the safe way. So he is coming at her in a protective and safe way, versus she is coming at him in a dangerous and careless way that he notices and turns around and tries to, I don't know, highlight. But I think that Benny Safdie focusing on that knife exchange so heavily, it is very zoomed in. You get a clear shot of the knife and how it is between the two of them, and just that little interaction when they're having the friction and he's out of rehab is so interesting to me. You could look at it two ways, that Dawn always comes at Mark with an edge, or with the blade side in a dangerous way, and he always comes at her in a safe and protective way. Or you could look at it as she doesn't mean anything rude when she's coming at him with the knife or anything, or just handing him a knife. That is simply an action, and Mark assigns meaning to it in a negative way, that everything Dawn does, he sees it as a negative thing that's supposed to hurt him, and he always turns it around at her. So there's two sort of little arguments that you could have, or two little schools of thought that you could have with the whole knife interaction that was just kind of running through my head. And I have to make sure that I remember that, and I really, because sometimes you watch these movies and you're like, oh, that was an interesting bit of visual storytelling, and then you forget about it and you never talk about it ever again. There's also another scene that is a carnival scene. She wants to go on this, those spinning alien spaceship ones where you stand on the wall and it sticks you to the wall. She wants to go on it. Mark's like, I can't, my tummy. I always love that he says tummy in this film. And that's just a really interesting scene in a way that he's sort of done with the Wild Times, but she wants to keep going with the Wild Times. And this is after he has gone to rehab, I believe, or before, I can't remember. But even that scene by itself, he's ready for these slower and more calm rides, like the little horsey ride that the merry-go-round or whatever, where you go in a circle on the kids' horses. And it's just those little interactions speak a lot and tell us a lot about their relationship. There's always friction in their relationship, and they were so uncompatible, and it's unbelievable. It actually blew me away at the end of the film when it said that they got back together and they were married and had a kid, and they divorced after 6 years, because it's just so unhealthy. And I couldn't believe it. At the start of the film, I was like, like, oh, maybe are Mark Kerr's friends just rude to Dawn and they don't give her a chance when she just wants to be a loving, supporting girlfriend, but she fails to realize the seriousness of the sport maybe, or it's just very complex that she doesn't realize maybe she's a bit of a distraction and that she doesn't stop him from drinking in the 2 weeks before his fight when he loses and he's injured and he's not himself, and she just doesn't really pay attention to that stuff, and she is a bit of an enabler. That was my biggest question coming out of the film. Was Dawn a little bit of an enabler? Because there are times where she says like, I need you to stop, I want you to stop, and they have that big fight that I thought was really poorly done when he like punches the door. So that's kind of one point in the non-enabler column. But then there's a lot of other interactions in the film, or a lot of relationship portrayals for them, where I'm wondering maybe she's not a direct enabler, but their relationship that they have and their dynamic is what's enabling Mark to go down that road, and him, turning to addiction and turning to using. And why is he an addict? I wish there was, things that weren't really explored that much of. They don't explore the fallout that after he was cheated twice and he got knees in the head that were illegal in 2 fights. They don't really explore how he feels about that being cheated and the no contest. It's just that he starts using after, but I didn't feel like there was enough mental exploration of that. But at the same time, I don't know. There is some, but it's very bare bones and a little bit too straightforward. And then why is he using? I feel like we don't ever really get a deep exploration of why he is addicted to these opioids, or why is he using after these losses. Is it because he is actually in pain and then he gets addicted to the sensation of them and getting high? If that's just the straight up answer, I don't know. Maybe it is just a straight up answer and it's not the point. But at the same time, I felt like there was a lot of really interesting space that they could have gone into with the addiction side of things and the mind of an addict and the mind of an addicted athlete, especially. How it's interesting, Mark Kerr talks about winning as a high and he's always chasing that high. So when he loses, he has to settle for the second best high that he's ever had in his life, which is the drugs that he's using. And I found that language very interesting, and those words from Mark Kerr very interesting, that he calls winning a high as someone that is using. It's like it's almost like in The Pit when they talk about what's the doctor's name who's caught using, and someone calls him an adrenaline junkie, and he sort of jumps at the word junkie and he's like, why'd you call me that? Sort of that. You can notice like in someone's language how they are addicted and how they're using. And the best writing in the film for me was in that scene when he talks about the winning being a high to Dawn. And now staying on the addiction train of thoughts, I thought it was really interesting when his trainer at the gym was having that issue after he punched or whatever. He had that like arm issue or whatever, and he's like, oh my god, it's gonna be sore for an hour and a half. I mean, he said that 1,000 times in the scene. And then Mark Kerr actually uses his stuff that he was addicted to, that he had an old batch in the gym, I guess, and he uses it on his trainer. And it's like, is that using when you're actually giving it to someone else? Not really. I don't know. That was just like a very interesting moment in the film where he even says to everyone in the gym, relax, I'm not using, it's old stuff. And it's like, are you almost getting someone else addicted possibly because they had that first rush? Who knows where that sensation went for his coach? And I was very fascinated by that interaction. But at the same time, how strong Mark Kerr is in that moment that he doesn't get tempted by it. And I can't remember, does he throw it out at the end of the scene? I thought he does throw it out, or I was trying to see, is he going to throw it out right after? But like, what's the psychology that he's feeling in that moment where he's like, I know this is going to be what's best for him. This is what I was addicted to, but someone else actually needs this for medical purposes, for the real intentions that it's supposed to be used for, or the real purposes that it's supposed to be used for. And that was a really strong bit of writing in the film. But let's move into the third act as we finish the spoiler section. Because of the pattern of subversion that we have in this film, that Benny Safdie is constantly trying to do something a little bit different within the biopic genre, but at the same time just hitting so many of the same targets. I knew Mark Kerr was going to lose that final fight, and the big reveal was going to be that he's happy losing and he's okay losing, that he can finally accept he lost a fight, and it's all right, especially considering his best friend won. And I thought it was a pretty touching ending, but you can see it come from a mile away. Like, look, I'm not going into every movie expecting to have all of my expectations subverted, that I want to have huge plot twists in the third act of, especially just like a biopic like this. But at some point, come on, blow me away a little bit. Do some fun, psychedelic, funky shit in a biopic. Like, you're a Safdie brother. Again, I just want to be mind blown a little bit, but it was just so straightforward. Like, okay, yeah, he's going to lose. He's not ready for this at all. He's distracted. He was distracted in the weeks before the fight when him and Dawn were having that huge falling out, which I thought was a really well done scene when they're fighting the night that they're going to have a party at their apartment. I thought that was the best scenes of the film, other than when Mark Coleman comes to visit him in the hospital. I thought Dwayne Johnson did particularly well in that fight, stopping Dawn from killing herself, and it was just a really powerful moment. But as for the final scene of the film, which I have seen a lot of people not like, and I've seen some people say it's interesting that it was in there. Of course, we flash to 2025 where we meet present day Mark Kerr grocery shopping, loading groceries in his truck, and then we get like the present day title cards of Mark Kerr was one of the blah 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 fighters of UFC history and no one knows their names and his name is Mark Kerr, and talking about him and Dawn, what happened with Mark Coleman, all of that stuff. And I just really didn't find it to be an entertaining or captivating final scene. I was like, I don't need to see present day Mark Kerr just being a happy guy shopping. I don't know. I was just, there could have been a way more gripping way to end it, but I guess it's just kind of like he's an average everyday guy is what Benny Safdie is trying to convey, or like people don't know who he is even though he's one of like the founding fathers of UFC or whatever. And it was an interesting way to end the film, but it didn't blow me away. I think that's all I really have for the Smashing Machine. I had just a lot of metaphors or visual storytelling I wanted to talk about. It's interesting how they balance the winning and losing fights that they want to show. It's a little bit more of a Mark Coleman biopic at times than it is a Mark Kerr biopic, but I mean, it entertained me for the most part. It was a little bit plain and vanilla, but the Smashing Machine is far from the worst film of the year. So if you're interested in stuff like this, go and watch the Smashing Machine in theaters, because it is a pretty okay looking movie, to be honest. I think the cinematography is interesting, but yeah, that's gonna do it for the Smashing Machine. Let's jump into what else I watched. All right, what else I watched? Well, I have 2 books, several shows, and 3 movies to talk about. Let's start with the books, of course. I finished Zatanna, the Mistress of Magic last week by Paul Dini, and I absolutely freaking loved it. Zatanna has always been a really fun character, whether it's in Batman the Animated Series. I think she shows up maybe in like one episode, or Justice League the Animated Series and Justice League Unlimited, and any other book I've seen her in. She's always a really, really compelling character, and Paul Dini just writes her so well. She's confident, she's competent, the tricks she's doing is really cool, and I've only just realized that the spells in the comics are all just the words backwards. So like put fire out, or the spell is just put fire out backwards, and I felt so stupid glazing over the spells and not reading them before. And then one of them I read, I was like, oh, that's spelled backwards, and then I went back like halfway through the book and was like, oh, I've missed all of the spells that you can see. It's like fire demons go away or whatever. And anyways, other than me feeling like a total dumbass reading those books, they were really fun, and I moved on to Batman Ego and Other Tales. You will see a video on my social media of reviewing it. I have read Batman Ego, the single shot or one shot issue, and freaking loved it. One of my favorite Batman stories ever now. I think I want to see it in live action, and I might even talk about that in a video sometime, but it's amazing. I'm moving on to Other Tales, the other aspects of it now. I might even go read it after I record this, or go for a run and then read it, but really good. If you haven't read Batman Ego, it's a great Batman comic. Go check it out. It's a single shot. But let's move into TV shows. Platonic Season 2, Episode 9, where Sylvia and Matt have a bit of a breakup. They are starting to draw some boundaries, and yeah, it's making me sad. I love this show so much, and it's so effective, and it's so well written, and it's just it's a bummer that Sylvia and Matt are starting to drift apart. I wonder if they're gonna do a season 3. I could see them maybe just stopping with the finale of this season, but honestly, the writing and the acting and everything is just so strong. It's hilarious. I love it, and I would love for them to keep going. And I mean, speaking of Rose Byrne, actually, If I Had Legs, I'd Kick You is coming out on October 17th worldwide, or theatrically. I don't know if it's worldwide, but theatrically it is coming out. I urge people to go and watch it. I might even do a full-length episode on that or Roofman. I don't know, because we have a shoot for my work that week, so we'll see how busy I am on that week. But she's doing great work in Platonic Season 2, and same with Seth Rogen. I love what they're both bringing to the table. But let's talk about Only Murders in the Building, because was no one going to tell me that Season 5 had started already? What the hell? I'm 6 episodes behind. So I watched episode 1 and 2 this week, and it's pretty fun. Speaking of Rose Byrne, her husband is Bobby Cannavale is his name or something like that, and he was on this season. I was surprised by that. He plays a mob guy. And then there's the woman from Death of a Unicorn and Fun with Dick and Jane. She plays the mob wife, and it's good. We just have like the classic jokes and the classic setups and just doing their classic things, and I'm enjoying it a lot. There was some de-aging in episode 2 that I really hated a lot. Like everyone was de-aged and it was just kind of strange. But still, if you're a fan of Only Murders in the Building and you weren't aware that there's a new season like me, go check it out. Next up was Survivor season 49 episode 2. What I thought was a major dud. I don't know, it's just like so predictable, and even when there are twists, like they're like, oh, we're not going to tell these people that they lost their vote right away, or oh, we're not going to say there's a tribe disadvantage or whatever. It's just like immediately, I don't know, it's just they need to find something to freshen up the formula. They need to go 2 tribes, they need to go themed, they need to really change the game because it's starting to get stale, and I'm hoping that 50 is the last season of the new era format, that 41 to 50 were 9 seasons where they repeated everything and then they really change it for the 50s. Who knows? Is it going to be a new host? I highly doubt it because Jeff is so protective. Are they going to change how many days it is? Are they going to go how many contestants it is? I don't know. Do they go down to 16 contestants and make it 26 days so they can have a little more leisurely time? Do they go back to 60-minute episodes so that way it's not so drawn out and like, yeah, we've seen all this? Because honestly, I don't see a lot of benefit of the 90-minute episodes anymore. It's just feel like we're not really getting to know the characters that much anymore, or the contestants. They're not characters, so they're contestants, but it's just excited for 50. I just feel like 49 is already shaping up to be a bit of a filler season, and it's worrying, but we'll see where it goes from here. It was a super straightforward boot this week with Annie. I mean, she never really stood a chance. Let's be real. Even with that guy, Jason, Alex, what's his name, who told her, oh, I have the idol. Let's be real. She was never going to be safe. He was just telling her to, lay her down softly before he takes her out. And yeah, a bit of a dud episode, but I did watch Gen V season 2 episode 4, which I thought was a lot of fun. I think, what's his name? Ian Linklater? No, what's his name? The Linklater dude who is the actor of Batman in the animated Crusader show. And then he's also in Midnight Mass. Well, he is just doing a great job as Cypher this season. I love that he's like a mind control dude, and there's a big twist in that episode, which I loved, and all the sneaking around they're doing with, what is it, Gender Bender versus Blood Bender fight. I don't know. Maybe I'm just getting a little bit tired of the boys' sense of humor, but at the same time, it's still a really entertaining show, and I think the performances are very good on it, and I'm having a lot of fun watching it. So I'm an episode behind. I'm going to watch episode 5 this weekend, or I don't know, one night this week, and I'm going to try and stay up to date week to week so we can chat about it. But let's talk about the second last episode of Peacemaker, and the final time we'll be talking about Peacemaker in the What Else I Watched segment, because next week's episode is going to be all about Peacemaker season 2. But holy dear God, what a way to run into the finale. I could watch an entire show of 2 vigilantes acting with our 11th Street kids, or if they do a season 3, they should somehow bring in a second vigilante, because it was just so much fun having 2 Adrians and the humor was off the chart. But honestly, a really strong penultimate episode with the Judo Master Adebayo stuff, the Chris and Hardcore stuff, and all of the sort of interesting nuances of his dad, Augie, in the Earth X dimension, where he's like, oh no, we're not a Nazi, but I can't fight everyone. And meanwhile, he has a mansion. He could be doing way more. And I think it's a really good criticism of the centrist view of like, well, what can we do? If you can't beat them, join them. And, or no, I'm against them, but I'm trying so hard. And it is kind of James Gunn taking some shots at these centrists who are not willing to sacrifice a bit of their privilege to fight against the evil of the world. And it's strong writing. I thought John Cena probably had his best episode, and I thought episode 6 was his best. Well, 7 was way better when he just starts screaming in pain for everyone to get off his brother in the other dimension. And I mean, holy shit, him seeing his dad murdered was just hilarious. We'll talk about it a little bit more next week, but I think it's a very strong season and I'm liking it a lot. I'm very excited to see what we have in store for the finale, but let's move into the 3 movies that I watched this week. So we're starting with Boogie Nights, Paul Thomas Anderson's second film from 1997, the story of a young, I don't know, hunk Mark Wahlberg, who, what's his real name's Eric or something like that, but then he turns into Dirk Diggler, and I absolutely loved Boogie Nights. I think it's not my favorite PTA, but very good. I'm working my way through his filmography, and it's, a classic story of Icarus, a guy who has nothing and then suddenly has all of his dreams and gets greedy. And I love the use of drugs and fame and ambitions and aspirations. It's sort of hitting on all the classic themes that I enjoy a lot. I thought Mark Wahlberg, my God, before I only had one performance that I liked from him with the other guys. Now I have two. I think he's brilliant in Boogie Nights as Eddie. That's his name. Yeah, Eddie. You know what? Boogie Nights, I thought it was an incredibly strong film. Maybe someday we'll do a PTA ranked with all of his films when I do finish his filmography, but right now I have it just ahead of Heart 8 and Licorice Pizza. I gave Boogie Nights 4.5 stars, but then I watched another PTA film called Punch Drunk Love, his next film from 2002, which I liked even more. I think this is like the sort of first indicator that Adam Sandler could do serious stuff, and he would eventually do Uncut Gems, because this is almost Uncut Gems OG. I loved it. I thought it was heartbreaking. It brought me to tears a couple of times and made me very sad, but I thought it was so well made. The funniest interaction of the entire film is when he's in Philip Seymour Hoffman's furniture shop and he's, intimidating him that I have a rage inside me and a love inside me that you'll never know and makes me so powerful and strong. Philip Seymour Hoffman's like, fine, that's that. And then when he's walking out, Philip Seymour Hoffman screams at him, "No, get the fuck out of here, pervert." And he turns around instantly, Adam Sandler, and he's like, "Didn't I warn you?" And he's like, "All right, that's that." And they walk away. Funniest interaction of the film. I thought it was so good. But, Punch Drunk Love is my favorite genre of films, where it's panic attack cinema. I love characters who are balancing 1,000 things. They are trying to get away from problems when life is emotionally kicking them in the nuts. I'm talking Good Time, Uncut Gems, If I Had Legs I'd Kick You. All of those most stressful films are the most rewarding for me, and I absolutely loved Punch Drunk Love. I gave it 4.5 stars. I seriously enjoyed it. It's one that I want to almost hit play as soon as you finish it. You want to go back and enjoy the 96-minute runtime. Like, it's so short that you can just go back and restart it, and it's just such a lovely exploration of love and anger issues and bullying, whether it's from your family or not. And I love the two stories that it's telling, with the phone sex hotline and then his own love life, and it's just really great. I thought Adam Sandler is so good in it, and I couldn't recommend it enough. You guys really need to check out Punch Drunk Love. But finally, I finished the week by watching Tron from 1982. I thought it was cool as hell. Like, I actually thought the acting was a little cheesy, and yes, the story is a little bit over the top sometimes, but the design is so cool. Are they rotoscoped, or what is that? How are they scanning everyone into the all animated background? Are they cutting them out and putting them over the animation, or just the blending of the worlds is really cool to me. I could watch that type of production design really for hours, and it's so funny seeing a young Jeff Bridges before he was all, "Yeah, man," as an old guy, and before we see him in Tron Ares as a resurrected soul or whatever. And I don't know. I'm going to watch Tron Legacy this week, of course, before we see Tron Ares next Thursday, but I really like Tron. I think it's like a fun little adventure space opera video game type thing, or a video game opera. I wouldn't say it's like anything super mind-blowing, and I think the acting is pretty bad in some parts, so I went with 3 stars. So only 3 films to talk about this week, but a lot of TV. But Boogie Nights gets 4.5 stars, Punch Drunk Love gets 4.5 stars, Tron gets 3 stars, and lots of stuff to talk about next week. But that has been What Else I Watched. And in fact, I think that's going to do it for episode 88, The Smashing Machine. What a time it was. Dwayne "The Rock" Johnson, will he get an Oscar? Who knows? But as always, please rate and review the show 5 stars wherever you get your great podcasts like Watcher of All Things, whether it's Spotify, Apple Podcasts, Amazon Music, or Acast. We are, of course, an Acast-produced show. You can rate and review right in the Spotify app and leave a comment right underneath the episode that you're listening to. If you're on the YouTube channel, please hit like, subscribe, and comment down below. What did you think of The Smashing Machine? Is Dwayne The Rock Johnson going to get that nomination? Where does this fall for other Oscar categories? You know, how many chances does it have at nominations? I don't think very many. I think it's probably just Dwayne Johnson that this is going to fall under. Also, check out my physical media and comics collection video, which is now on the channel. It was a lot of fun to film, and I hope you guys enjoy it. If you want to get in touch with the show, you can email us, watcherofallthings@gmail.com, and find me on social media. Instagram and Threads are at watcherofallthings. The TikTok is at watcher.of.all.things. I post on social media literally every day, so there's tons of extra stuff for you guys to enjoy there outside of the podcast. You can also follow my personal Letterboxd account, KikiJ70. That's KIKIJ70. Follow me on there. Drop a comment under one of my reviews that you found me through the show. I'll follow you back. Let's build a little community. Next week, as I said, Peacemaker Season 2. I'm very excited to chat about this season, how the finale is going to lead into Man of Tomorrow. Maybe we'll do some fan theories if I can find some online, but let me know what you think of Peacemaker ahead of then. I might read it out throughout the show. But for now, thank you all so much for listening. Thank you all for the kind messages I get on social media and support. I really do appreciate it. Take care of yourselves, and I will see you in the next one.